the sacred warnings of Padre Pio.
One mortal sin from hell. That phrase. One mortal sin from hell. I read it 3 weeks ago on a Tuesday at maybe 2 in the morning, and I cannot get it out of my head. I was sitting in my house in Covington, the house that has been entirely too quiet since Margaret passed away 3 years ago, and I was scrolling through a Catholic forum online. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just reading what people were saying, trying to fill the silence of the room. And a man named Pablo wrote that phrase. He was coming back to the church after years away. He was trying to do things right, trying to piece his faith back together. And someone had told him that if he missed Sunday Mass and died on Monday in a car crash, he would go straight to hell over that one decision. One mortal sin from hell. He wrote that he felt confused. He felt afraid. He felt like he was never going to be good enough to actually be saved. He said he looked at his Protestant friends, and they seemed so at peace with their salvation, so secure. Meanwhile, he felt like he was walking on a tightrope over a blazing fire, where one misstep, one bad day, one moment of weakness would erase every good thing he had ever done. Reading his words, I felt this strange, cold weight settle into my chest. Because I know that fear. I have seen that fear in the eyes of hundreds of people, and for 35 years, I was the one who inadvertently helped create it. For 35 years, I taught high school religion. For 35 years, I stood in front of teenagers in a Catholic school in northern Kentucky. I can still smell the chalk dust. I can still see the rows of desks, the kids staring out the window toward the Ohio River, waiting for the bell to ring. And for decades, I stood at the blackboard and I wrote the definition of mortal sin. I drew a clean, precise line down the middle of the board. Mortal on one side, venial on the other. I treated it like a vocabulary term. I made it safe. I made it into a formula. And I realized, reading Pablo's terrified words at 2 in the morning, that I had entirely missed the point. Before I go further into this, if you are the kind of person who cannot let go of a question until you truly understand the reality beneath it, this channel is for you. Subscribing tells the algorithm to keep you here, to keep sending you these videos, because I have a lot more stories and a lot more questions that simply will not let me go, and I do not want to figure them out alone. I spent 35 years teaching theology from textbooks. I went to the Athenaeum of Ohio for seminary. I sat in lecture halls and listened to moral theology professors who were brilliant men, but who taught the faith like it was a legal contract. They drew that hard, precise line between mortal and venial sin on their blackboards, and I took those lessons and I taught them the exact same clinical way. I would write the 3 conditions on my own chalkboard: grave matter, full knowledge, deliberate consent. I would tell the sophomores to memorize those 3 things for the test on Friday, and they would memorize them. They would write them down in their neat little notebooks, and then they would forget them by Saturday morning, never once connecting those 3 sterile concepts to an actual Friday night decision. I thought I was doing a good job. I thought I was giving them the rules of the road, the basic grammar of being Catholic. But I never taught them the terror of it. I never taught them the unbearable weight of what that checklist actually means. I did not realize it until I read Pablo's post. Pablo asked the question that every skeptic asks, the question that is at the bottom of so much modern anxiety, the question that I used to brush off with a quick, prepackaged theological answer. He asked how it was fair. He said it felt disproportionate. A whole eternity of punishment for one finite, bad decision? That does not sound like a loving God, he wrote. That sounds like a technicality trap. It sounds like a philosophical trick invented to justify something that feels incredibly excessive. I wanted to give him my textbook answer. I wanted to type out the neat little paragraphs I used to put on my study guides. I wanted to tell him that God is just and God is merciful, and to just trust the process. But sitting there in the dark, I could not do it, because the textbook answer suddenly felt hollow to me. If I am honest, Pablo's question bothered me because it is a question I had buried. I mean, really think about it. If I steal $50 from my neighbor, I owe him $50. The punishment fits the crime. The act takes place in a finite moment of time, and the debt is finite. Even if I commit a terrible crime, like burning down a house, the damage is immense, but it is still measurable. It is still finite. So how does a finite human act committed in a fleeting moment on a Thursday afternoon merit an eternal, unending, infinite punishment? It feels rigged. It feels like the scales are violently unbalanced. I could have gone to sleep. I should have gone to sleep, but I could not. The question was a hook in my brain. What if I am already carrying something serious right now, and I have just gotten used to the weight of it? What if I am walking around spiritually dead, just waiting for my heart to stop to make it official? I walked into my study. I turned on the desk lamp. I pulled down my old seminary books. But I was not reading them to build a lesson plan. I was reading them because I needed to know if the system was a trap, or if there was something massive and terrifying that I had simply been too blind to see. I started digging. I looked for the commentators who try to soften it. You know the ones. The modern writers who say that maybe hell is empty, or that God just looks at the overall trajectory of your life, and if you are mostly a good person, He just waves away the bad parts. I wanted to believe them. It is so incredibly comfortable to believe that. It turns God into a harmless, permissive grandfather who just wants everyone to be happy and not think too hard about the consequences. It makes religion into a therapeutic blanket. But the historical church does not teach that. The historical church has never taught that. I opened the documents from the Council of Trent, the 6th session, the decree on justification from the year 1547. Let me set the scene for you, because 1547 was not a quiet year. The church was tearing itself apart. The reformers in Europe were preaching that faith alone was enough to save you, that once you were justified, your actions no longer had the power to sever that ultimate relationship with God. And the Council Fathers at Trent sat down to answer that claim. And the language they used is absolutely brutal in its clarity. They defined that the grace of justification, once you receive it, is lost not only by losing your faith, but by any other mortal sin, however grave, even while your faith itself remains completely intact. Let me say that again, because it stopped the breath in my throat. You can still believe in God. You can still have faith. You can still pray. You can still intellectually agree that Jesus Christ is Lord. But one fully deliberate mortal sin kills the life of grace in your soul. It destroys it. Venial sin wounds it, but mortal sin kills it dead. I sat there looking at the page, and I felt a surge of anger, a real, deep anger at the rigidity of it. This is exactly why people leave, I thought. This is exactly why Pablo is terrified. How is anyone supposed to live under this kind of pressure? The theology seemed to admit that you need full knowledge and full consent, but even that felt like a loophole. It felt vague. It proved to me, in that moment of anger, that the whole category was arbitrary, invented to control people, to keep them anxious and dependent on the institution. I almost gave up right there. I almost closed the book and decided that the modern, softened version was the only way to stay sane. I was exhausted. It was past 3 in the morning. I was ready to walk away and just accept that the old theology was too harsh for the modern mind. But I did not walk away. I pulled down the Summa Theologiae. St. Thomas Aquinas. Prima Secundae. Question 87. And Aquinas did what Aquinas always does. He completely dismantled my small, human way of thinking. Aquinas addressed the exact objection I was wrestling with. He asked how a temporal sin could merit an infinite punishment. and his answer shifted the ground right out from under me. He wrote that the gravity of an offense is not measured solely by the act itself. It is measured in large part by the dignity of the one who is offended. Let me rephrase that, because it is crucial, and it changes everything. If I walk down the street in Covington and I slap a stranger across the face, I have committed an assault. I will go to jail for a few days, maybe pay a fine. But if I travel to England, walk into the palace and slap the king across the face, I have committed treason. The physical act is exactly the same. The movement of my hand, the force of the blow, it is identical. The act is finite. But the weight of the crime, the gravity of the offense, changes entirely based on the majesty of the person I struck. I sat back in my chair. The anger started to drain away, replaced by a very different kind of dread. Then I opened St. Alphonsus Liguori. He took this logic from Aquinas and pushed it to its absolute, terrifying conclusion. Liguori wrote about the malice of mortal sin. He said that mortal sin carries a kind of infinite malice. Why? Because it is an offense against the infinite majesty of God. He gave an example that I have not been able to stop thinking about. He wrote that if all the angels in heaven, all the saints throughout all of human history, and even the Blessed Mother herself came together and offered all of their combined merits to atone for just one single mortal sin, it would not be enough. Think about that. Take a moment and really let that sink in. All the goodness, all the purity, all the suffering and love of every saint who has ever lived, the martyrs, the mystics, the apostles, combined into one massive offering. It cannot pay the debt of one single mortal sin, because their offering, as beautiful and holy as it is still finite. They are creatures, but the debt of mortal sin is infinite, on account of the infinite dignity of the Creator who is offended. The silence in my house felt extremely heavy right then. The old grandfather clock in the hallway was ticking, and it sounded like a hammer. It was not a theological puzzle anymore. It was not a vocabulary term for my sophomores. It was reality. When we commit a mortal sin, we are not just breaking a bureaucratic rule. We are not just failing a moral test. We are looking directly at the infinite, eternal, all-loving Creator of the universe, the source of all being and all goodness, and we are saying to His face, I know what you want. I know who you are, and I choose this temporary pleasure over you. I choose myself over you. I prefer this finite thing to your infinite love. And what happens when we die in that state? The Catechism of the Catholic Church, in paragraph 1861, says something chilling. It says that human freedom has the power to make choices forever, with no turning back. Aquinas explains that when the soul separates from the body at death, it loses the changeability that belongs to our life in time. It freezes in its final orientation. It becomes permanently fixed in the direction it was facing when the clock ran out. In time, we change our minds constantly. We love someone one day, we resent them the next. But eternity does not have time. Eternity is a single, unending now. If you die turned toward God, you remain turned toward God forever. But if you die having chosen to turn away from God, you remain turned away forever. God does not actively torture you in hell. He simply honors the terrible majesty of your free will. He gives you exactly what you insisted on having. You said, I do not want you. And God, in His infinite respect for the freedom He gave you, says, Thy will be done. Forever. I felt sick to my stomach. The weight of it was crushing. I wished I had not opened the books. I wished I had just gone to sleep. But then, as I was staring at the pages of the Catechism, my eyes drifted back a few paragraphs. Back to paragraph 1857. The three conditions. Grave matter. Full knowledge. Deliberate consent. I told you earlier that I used to write those on the chalkboard. I used to think they were just the rules of the game. I thought they were just a bureaucratic checklist the Church invented to keep things organized. But reading them now, after understanding the infinite weight of the offense, I realized something that completely broke my heart. Those 3 conditions are not a trap, they are a shield. God knows the infinite consequence of a mortal sin. He knows that it kills the life of grace. And because He is infinitely merciful, He refuses to let us fall into that abyss accidentally. The Church built the strictest, narrowest definition possible precisely to protect us, to protect people like Pablo. If an act lacks full knowledge, it is not a mortal sin. If it lacks deliberate, completely free consent, it is not a mortal sin. You cannot stumble into hell by mistake. You cannot commit a mortal sin by being confused or by being pushed into something by an overwhelming addiction or a sudden panic or a psychological compulsion. Scrupulosity is a spiritual disease that makes people terrified that every mistake is a mortal sin. It paralyzes them. They think God is standing over them with a microscope, looking for any excuse to condemn them. But the Church says no. To commit a mortal sin, to actually sever your relationship with God, you have to know exactly how grave the matter is, and you have to coldly, freely, deliberately choose to do it anyway. God set the bar incredibly high because He does not want to lose you on a technicality. The 3 conditions are not a weapon to condemn you. They are the ultimate proof of His mercy. He has engineered the system to give you every possible chance to turn back. I closed the books. It was dawn. The sky outside my window over the Ohio River was turning a pale, cold blue, and I realized that I had lost something that night. I lost my epistemic innocence. I can never go back to treating sin casually. I cannot unsee the math of eternity. I cannot look at my own life, my own small compromises, my own selfish decisions, and pretend they do not matter. I used to comfort myself by thinking, well, I am mostly a good guy. I was a religion teacher. I never killed anyone. I never robbed a bank. But now, every time I look at the crucifix on my wall, I see the infinite cost of my choices. I see that my sin is not a vocabulary word on a Friday test. It is the nails. It is the unbearable weight that required the literal blood of God to wash away. I wish I did not know this sometimes, because it is a terrifying responsibility to possess a will that can choose eternity. You do not unlearn this. You just learn to carry it. You know, Margaret used to ask me about this. When we were younger, sitting on the porch watching the river, she used to ask if I thought the rules I was teaching were too strict. She wondered if they were driving the kids away, and I would always defend them. I would always say that structure is what keeps people safe, but I never explained to her the abyss that the structure was built over. I never explained that the structure was not a cage. It was a bridge over a literal fire. I wish she was here now. I wish I could tell her what I saw in those books at 3 a.m. I think she would have understood it far faster than I did. I think about those kids I taught. Thousands of them over the years. They are adults now. They have families. They have mortgages. And I wonder how many of them are walking around like Pablo, terrified of a God they think is trying to trap them. Or worse, how many of them are walking around completely numb, assuming that none of it matters because God is just a concept, a therapeutic idea that does not demand anything of them. I feel a terrible responsibility for that. I gave them a map, but I never told them that the territory was real. Remember when I told you about my classroom? Remember how I said I spent 35 years drawing a clean, precise line on the blackboard, teaching the 3 conditions as if they were just a checklist? I was right to teach those 3 conditions, but I was teaching the entirely wrong lesson. I started out thinking they were just the rules of a theology exam, a way to know if you failed the test. I found out, at 3 a.m, 35 years too late, that they are the coordinates of the soul. They are the exact map of human freedom. I wanted clarity when I opened those books. I demanded clarity, and I got it. But it is a clarity that burns. I did not go to bed that morning. I waited until my local parish opened, and I went to confession. Not out of routine. Not because it was a first Saturday or a holiday. I went because I suddenly understood what Padre Pio knew every single time he sat in that wooden box in San Giovanni Rotondo. People used to travel from all over Europe to confess to Padre Pio. They would stand in line for days. He sat in that confessional for 12, sometimes 15 hours a day. He could read souls. He knew if someone was lying. He knew if someone was holding something back. And sometimes, in the middle of a confession, he would just weep. People heard him say, "Oh, the souls, if you only knew how much they cost." Padre Pio knew the weight. He knew that when someone walked into his confessional and truly repented, an infinite debt was being wiped clean by the blood of Christ. He warned people that a confession made without true repentance was a deception of conscience. He would sometimes throw people out of his confessional if they were treating it like a bureaucratic checklist, the same way I taught it for 35 years. He did not do that to be cruel. He did it because he saw the infinite reality that we are completely blind to. He was trying to wake them up before the clock ran out. I do not know where you are right now. I do not know what you are carrying. Maybe you are like Pablo, terrified that you are never going to be good enough, paralyzed by the fear of one mortal sin from hell. Or maybe you are like I was for most of my life, just coasting along, treating the rules of the church like a bureaucratic checklist, thinking it is really no big deal. But I am telling you, as an old man who spent a lifetime teaching the textbook and missing the truth entirely, do not play games with eternity. If you know, deep down in the silence of your own conscience, that you have crossed that line with full knowledge and deliberate consent, do not wait. Do not rationalize it. Find a priest. Schedule a confession. Today, tomorrow. Make the time. Because your soul was bought at an infinite price, and it is far too precious to leave in the dark. There is one more thing you can do. When we begin to truly understand the immense weight of sin, we also start to understand the reality of purgatory. Padre Pio spent his entire life interceding for the souls there, souls who died in a state of grace, but who still carried the temporal weight of their choices. In the description of this video, and in the pinned comment below, there is a link to Purgatory Rescue. It is a 30-day prayer campaign, structured day by day, to pray for the deceased. It is a very concrete way to use your time right now to help those who can no longer help themselves. I have to keep making these videos. I have to keep reading these letters and these documents and finding these truths because someone has to say the things that the textbooks leave out. If you found value in this journey today, if this shifted something for you, consider using the Super Thanks button. It keeps this channel alive, and it reminds me that I am not just speaking into the void. You are not just a viewer. You are a part of this journey with me. I want to ask you something before you go. Did this make you think differently about the rules of the church? Did the 3 conditions for mortal sin feel like a trap to you before? And do they feel different to you now? Tell me in the comments. I read them all. And I really need to know if I am the only one who had to relearn this the hard way.